Hi, I'm Jeff, and welcome to another one of my videos where I take a look at all the new comic books coming out on either March 22nd or 23rd, 2022, and I ask myself the question, what one new comic book would I buy this week if I could buy just one book? Well, after last week's bye week, let's call it, we are back true to form this week with our typical just one book video. The one difference this week is that I will not be talking about my pick from 2 weeks ago, because 2 weeks ago I didn't have a pick. It was just a video where I showcased all the #1 books that were coming out, so there's no pick to look back on this week. So we're going to go ahead and move straight forward into the books that are coming out this week. As is mostly typical in these videos, I will be starting off talking about my 5 honorable mentions, and then I will have my just one book pick of the week for you. The only book that I am pulling this week that is not among the books that I'm going to mention in this video for honorable mentions and my pick for the week is Saga, issue number 57. But I'm really enjoying Saga. I am glad that I have started to read it, and I am definitely going to continue to read it. If you remember when I mentioned Saga a couple weeks ago, I mentioned how on League of Comic Geeks, they organize all the new books for the week from the one that's being pulled the most by people who are using League of Comic Geeks to the book that's being pulled the least. Well, right now, Saga is sitting in the #1 position on League of Comic Geeks. I mean, it is above some heavy hitter books in the industry. It's up there above Detective Comics, Action Comics. So people are responding really, really well to this Saga book, and I understand why. But it's not one of my honorable mentions this week. It's just something I'm pulling and enjoying. But let's go ahead and look at my first honorable mention this week, which is Rogues, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from DC Black Label. Here's the description. 10 years ago, the Rogues disbanded and went their separate ways, but time hasn't been kind to the former blue-collar supercriminals. Caught in an endless cycle of prison, rehab, dead-end jobs, broken relationships, probation, and endless restitution fees, the Rogues are sick of paying for their crimes. Luckily, Captain Cold has a plan, one last job that will leave them all richer than their wildest dreams and free them from their past, if they can survive. This is the Rogues as you've never seen them before, reimagined by the incredible talents of master storytellers Leo Max and Joshua Williamson. DC Black Label presents Rogues, a neo-noir heist that will make your blood run cold. Okay, I'm really glad that DC has this Black Label section of their publishing. There's some really great stories and great storytelling coming from DC Black Label. And this does not appear to me at first glance to be an exception. This sounds like it could be a really fun, entertaining, cool story to check out. If I had any complaints with DC Black Label, it's that many of their books, not all of them, but many of them are presented in the oversized format, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but as comic book collectors, we've got our long boxes, we've got our bags and boards, and these books just don't fit in those things. So from a storage perspective, it's a little bit wonky, and I kind of wish that maybe they just told these stories in a traditional format so that I could just store them away with my other comic books, but that's a very mild and ticky-tack complaint. Ultimately, I'm sure the larger format lends itself really, really well to the art, so I have to appreciate it in that regard. But the story sounds really great. It might be something you consider checking out this week. The next book I want to mention to you is Wolverine Patch, issue number 1 of a 5-issue limited series from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. All new action, intrigue, and espionage awaits you as legendary creator Larry Hama returns with a story set before his original run on Wolverine. The mutant known as Logan has made a name for himself on the mysterious island of Madripoor, where the locals know him as Patch. From their haunt at the Princess Bar, which starts as a simple recon mission, lands Patch. What starts as a simple recon mission lands Patch and Archie knee-deep in a paramilitary struggle that will surface some surprise revelations and characters. And is that Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Yes. 2 patches for the price of 1. A must-have for long-standing readers and a welcome entry point for new readers of Wolverine. Okay, well, Wolverine is, I'm going to go ahead and say my favorite comic book character. I like him very, very much. And part of what really got me into Wolverine was back in the late 80s and early 90s when the Wolverine solo ongoing series came out. I read that thing, I enjoyed it so much, and that's basically where Patch came from. So in a lot of ways, my first impressions and experiences with Wolverine were through this kind of Patch persona. And Wolverine's had different personas throughout the time, but this Patch one is kind of like, I don't know, it's cool. He doesn't really feel like a superhero per se, but I mean, he's still got the healing factor in the claws and all the other things. It's just it's an interesting part of the character that I really, really enjoy. So I think if you're a Wolverine fan, checking out this Wolverine Patch story is just kind of a must. In fact, I've been trying to talk myself out of talking myself out of picking this up. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I'm a Wolverine fan, and this could be really, really good. So I think I'll probably pick this one up. I would recommend it for you as well. In addition, I just want to point out real fast that if you like this Scotty Young cover right here, make sure that you have the notification bell hit on my channel here. On Wednesday, I'm going to put out a little short video in relation to this cover, something I thought I'd try to do for fun, and you might want to consider checking it out when it comes out on Wednesday. All right, the next book that I want to tell you about this week, my next honorable mention, is Demon Days Blood Feud, issue number 1 from Marvel Comics. Here's the description. The final chapter of the Demon Days saga. At the end of the road, Mariko Yashida finally meets the one who's been hunting her, a silver-clad swordswoman named Ogin, one of those two, who's also Mariko's sister. Will Mariko have to cross blades with her own flesh and blood, or will Ogin's giant green bodyguard smash Mariko to pieces first? The stakes are high and the emotions are higher in this epic conclusion to the Demon Days saga by Stormbreaker Peach Momoko. All right, so basically everything you really need to know is right there in that description. This is from Peach Momoko. She's been doing this kind of like Japanese folklore version of the X-Men, characters, kind of, sort of, and other Marvel characters as well. I have enjoyed it much more than I would have anticipated. I picked it up out of curiosity, and because Peach Momoko, I mean, you didn't get much hotter than Peach Momoko when this thing first showed up, so I thought, well, why don't I check out what it would be like if she had full run, full creative control, she's writing the scripts, she's doing the art, what would that be like? And I read the first issue and I was like, this is interesting. This is a totally different perspective on the Marvel Universe, and I liked it. So I kept reading the stories, and as I've been reading the stories, I am more and more interested. So I am definitely going to be, this is one of the books that I'm pulling this week, I'm definitely going to be picking up Demon Days Blood Feud issue number 1. The two complaints, though, I'll say about this series in general is, one, I wish they hadn't spaced out issues by like 3 or 4 months. To me, it doesn't seem, it's just a little bit too much to me to spread them out that much. I also don't love that they gave each one different titles and made each one an issue number 1 as if they were individual one-shots. They're not. It is an ongoing story. It should have just been a mini-series. Because of the way they did it, I almost missed this issue until I did the research for this video this week. So that aside, how they've been handling the publishing of the book, once again, it's a good story. I enjoy it. You can probably still go back and pick up the other issues if you wanted to pick up and read the whole story. I'm sure they'll probably put the whole thing out in trade as well if you prefer to do it that way. The next book that I want to mention to you this week is a new book. It's called We Have Demons, issue number 1 of a 3-issue limited series from Dark Horse Comics. Here's the description. Since the very dawn of man, legends have been told of the conflict between angel and demon kind. Lamb Lyle, a woman of science, dismissed these stories as just that, fiction. But when the loss of a loved one leads to the discovery of a hulking, benevolent demon named Helvis, Lamb realizes that her life is about to undergo a dire new direction. With a newfound partner and awesome powers now at her disposal, our hero suddenly finds herself thrust into a climactic war of good and evil, with no less than the fate of the world hanging in the balance. This book includes sketch material and original scripts. And also, keep in mind, cover C, which is the same as the A cover, is different in that it has a red foil logo. So if you decide to pick up this book, you might consider picking up the one with the red foil logo. That one, I think it's an extra $1, but it's probably going to be worth it. Anyways, why am I interested in this book? Well, it actually sounds like a pretty interesting story. It sounds like it could be a good read, but it's the names attached that really, really stand out for me. And those names are writer Scott Snyder and artist Greg Capullo. Those are two guys that you got to pay attention to when they're doing something. And so I'm paying attention to this. This is another one of these books this week, similar to Wolverine Patch, where I'm kind of like, man, I'm really trying to minimize the amount of books I get each week. If I can say no to something, I will say no to it. But that Wolverine Patch one sounds like fun, and this one sounds like it could be interesting as well. So it's very possible that I'm going to add this one to my list of books that I'm buying this week too, just because I have a lot of faith in Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and Patch and We Have Demons. They're both mini-series. They're both low commitments. So as long as I enjoy the first issue, I tend to give things several issues, a chance over several issues. Well, it's a benefit when these are only 5 or 3 issues long, because it's a low commitment. I can get the whole story and not feel so guilty about trying it out like I'm going to be throwing a bunch of money down the hole. But this We Have Demons sounds pretty cool. The creators are great. Definitely something worth considering picking up this week. My final honorable mention this week is The Department of Truth, issue number 17 from Image Comics. Here's the description. End of story arc, it says, which is that's kind of iffy if you ask me. The third arc of Eisner-nominated The Department of Truth concludes here. I don't know if that's accurate. As breakout star Jorge Fornes joins the team to reveal the long-awaited secrets behind one of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time. Strap in, folks. Richard Nixon has a moon landing to fake. All right, we'll get back to that in a second. But part of my hesitation about them calling this the conclusion of a third arc is that it's kind of sort of not. If you've been reading the Department of Truth, you know that they had a thing where they had the first 5 issues was kind of like our main story. Then issue number 6 and 7 kind of went back in time and gave us some of the history of the Department of Truth. Then you had what I believe, I hope I'm getting my numbers right, 8 through 12, which was back to the main storyline. And then you had like 13, 14, and 15 or something like that. I know I'm getting the numbers wrong. My point is, you've had main storyline, then kind of backstory, then main storyline, and then backstory. This is another backstory section. So I don't know why they're calling it the end of an arc, because it's not exactly an arc, it's the end of a backstory section before we get into the next main story section. I'm being a little myopic, I admit, but that's my hesitation around calling this the end of a story arc. But that aside, the reason why this book is on my honorable mentions this week is, one, because I'm a gigantic fan of the Department of Truth, and I'm a gigantic fan of James Tynion IV, and he just delivers for me over and over and over and over and over again. I love his stuff so much. I could recommend to you any James Tynion IV book any week that one of his books comes out. He's just really, really great. So that's absolutely one reason that the Department of Truth is on my honorable mentions this week. But kind of the main reason it's on my honorable mentions is because they're dealing with, like they say here, one of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time, the moon landing. Was it faked? In my opinion, hell no, it wasn't faked. But it is a really kind of fun and entertaining conspiracy theory, which is generally the idea that Stanley Kubrick, who was asked to rent out a soundstage and fake the moon landing. It's pretty an interesting one and a fun one, and one that you knew eventually the Department of Truth was going to tackle. And as a big fan of James Tynion IV, the Department of Truth, and space exploration, this is one that's really exciting for me. I'm really interested to see James Tynion IV's take on the conspiracy around the moon landing through the filter of the Department of Truth. So this could be a really fun and entertaining book to check out this week. And if you've never read an issue of Department of Truth and you're like, why would I pick up issue number 17? You do not really need to have read the Department of Truth ever before. I can almost guarantee you that you can pick up this issue and read it as a standalone and enjoy it in and of itself without having any of the backstory. The backstory will help, of course, but I don't think it's essential. So consider picking it up if you've been curious about picking up the Department of Truth and you just haven't done so yet. All right, finally, let's go ahead and take a look at the one book that I would buy this week if I could buy just one book. It's a bit of a surprising one, too. That book is Count Crowley, Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter, issue number 1 of a 4-issue limited series from Dark Horse Comics. Here's the description. It's been a hell of a week for Jerry Bartman. She lost her job, crashed her car, took the only gig available hosting the Midnight Monster Show, and, oh yeah, dismembered a zombie. No big deal. Now, to protect the people she loves, she's going to have to take a crash course in monster hunting. And quickly, a vengeful vampire just booked a first-class flight into town. The quote here is, a love letter to 1980s horror kitsch. Count Crowley, reluctant midnight monster hunter, oh, this is about the original one, number 1, is Lois Lane / Jessica Jones mashup that you didn't know you needed. Okay, so here's the deal. This is Count Crowley, Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter, is a second volume of a series that came out 2.5, maybe 3 years ago at the most, which was Count Crowley, Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter. Now, this is a bit of an odd book. On the surface, this book seems like it's kind of a pulpy, campy, monster-themed comic book, and that it could be a little goofy, and something that's just like, yeah, Jeff, that doesn't really sound like it's for me. But here's the deal. I read Count Crowley, Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter, the first 4 issues, the first volume of this. It was really good. I mean, really good. I was blown away. I remember when I read it, telling people, this is one of the best things that I've read, period, comic book or otherwise, in a very long time. The main character, Jerry Bartman, is a flawed and interesting character. And she's thrust into this extreme circumstance, and she has to manage it the best that she can. And it is really, it's fun, and I like fun, but it's also like, it gave me the feels. I'm going to tell you that. It really was fantastic in its nature. I mean, it is about a monster hunter, but it also was really, really grounded in the truth and the just kind of internal conflicts that the main character has. She is by no means someone that you might, you don't want to necessarily be her. She has her issues, but she's doing her best to work through them. And the combination of who she is as a flawed character and the fantastic elements of the story and the monsters really made it a book that I enjoyed a lot. Now, one thing I'm going to mention to you is I have my copies here. Let me lean over and get them carefully. I don't want to drop them on the floor. I have my copies here of Count CROWLEY, Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter. And you will see each one is actually signed. They are all signed with this one personalized, saying, "Jeff, the monsters are coming." All of these are signed by the writer of this book. And that writer is David Dalsmachian. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that correct. David Dalsmachian. Yes, I think I got that pretty close. Now, if that name does not immediately jump out at you, he is this guy. He recently played Polka Dot Man in the most recent Suicide Squad movie. He's done a lot of other great acting in a lot of very popular comic book movies. So he's an actor whose face you probably recognize right away. Well, he is the writer of Count CROWLEY. And he's also written a movie, or two actually, or maybe even more than that. He is not only a really talented actor, he's a really good writer. And also a super nice guy. When I met him to sign these books, he was just a great guy to meet. So I just thought I would have to mention that as well, that he's also the writer of this. But I want to back up just real fast before I finish up and say that I'm not recommending this book this week because I met David Dalsmachian once and had him sign some comic books. I'm mentioning it because I went out of my way to go meet him and to have him sign those comic books because I really thought he did a fantastic job creating them. And because I enjoyed reading the original 4 issues so much, that is why I'm really looking forward to this second volume coming out this week, the first of 4 issues. And that is why Count CROWLEY, Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter, is my just one book pick for this week. Okay, there it is. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like the content, as always, likes are appreciated by me. If you haven't subscribed already, I invite you to subscribe. Once again, make sure you have that notification bell hit because I've got a fun little thing coming out later this week. I'd like to hear what you all have to think about it. As always, thank you so much for watching all of my videos. I really appreciate all of you to do that week after week. I'll see you in the next one.